I'm Jordan. This is Amy. Go ahead and introduce yourself and where you went and what years, all that stuff.
My name's Amy, and I was at CrossCreek Manor in Laverton, Utah, and at High Impact in Teichman, Mexico. Both were W.W.A.S.P programs.
Okay. And what year did you go there? CrossCreek.
CrossCreek, I was there, and I think like 98 to 99. I was there longer. I was there for about, I know it was over a year. So like I think it was 98 or no, 99. It was 99. I was 16, and I was at High Impact in 2001 and turned 18, got kicked out of there about a month before they went in and shut it all down.
Okay. So you went to, just to clarify, you went to you went to CrossCreek first and then you went to High Impact, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And so, were you transported or did you get tricked into going up there? How did that happen?
I was escorted. My mom and my aunt told me that we were going to Las Vegas for the weekend, and my uncle was there on business. We were just going for the weekend. It was going to be a great weekend. I was told that the people picking us up at the airport were coworkers of my uncle's, and they were going to take us to our hotel. We went out to the car, and they had me get in first, and I realized nobody else was getting in the car.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, that's kind of weird. And my mom started crying, and I was really starting to think, this sounds kind of weird.
Yeah.
But I was 16 and lived a pretty sheltered life up to that point, so I didn't know that these like schools existed or that there was such a thing as being like transported and escorted. And my aunt handed me a letter, and she was like, I'm sorry, we don't know how else to help you. And they shut the door. And I mean, your immediate instinct is you're left with two strangers. You're taught your whole life about stranger danger, and here you're left with two people you've never met. Like, I'd never even seen this man and woman before in my life. And I immediately tried to get the doors open, break a window, anything that I could think of, and the guy was like, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. He's like, you're making it clear you want to do it the hard way. And they ended up putting zip ties on my wrists, and they were like, we'll take them off when you can calm down. And they drove me from Las Vegas into Utah.
Okay.
And it, like, Laverton is just this tiny little, like, not even a blip on a radar. Not a whole lot going on there. A lot of church people. And a program. Well, there were a couple. There was another facility that was not W.W.A.S.P related there, and they had a couple different branches of CrossCreek. When I was first taken there was the boys facility, the high phase for girls.
Which is upper levels?
Yeah.
Okay.
I know nothing about that place, though.
Okay.
Like, the whole time I was there, I only made it to, I think, a level 2.
Okay. Yeah, I'm actually familiar with CrossCreek. I went there during PC2. So, yeah, it's a really small town. Let's see. So you got transported there. Did you feel like you're being kidnapped?
Yeah.
Like legit, like you are being kidnapped, but you know what I mean, like kidnapped.
Yeah, you don't know these people. Like, even though I had been with my mom and aunt right up to that point, it was still, yeah, you feel like you're being kidnapped. You don't know these people. You don't know where the hell they're taking you. For all I knew, they were going to take me to God only knows. I mean, luckily it was only Utah, but at that point they could have taken me anywhere. And like living in Oregon now, I know that there's a big problem with human trafficking.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, for all you know, when these people take the kids, like, you don't, what are their qualifications? What are their true intentions? Are they really going to take, well, I mean, it's bad enough they are willing to take children to programs, but like they're complete strangers. What trainings and things do they have to go through to get that type of a job where you're making a living legally kidnapping children?
Yeah. Well, they probably just need a driver's license. Show us your
I
driver's
doubt it
license.
with how those types of places run.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised at all. Just show me your driver's license, you know, make sure you have your social security number, you know, you're good to
I
roll.
think that was like just kind of a WASP standard. Oh, you have a driver's license, you're over the age of 18, you're hired.
Mm-hmm.
Because none of the staff at either of the WASP programs that I was at were qualified in any way to do what they were doing. Some of our therapists, I found out, of course, after, aren't even licensed.
I know.
And I'm like, okay, so wait, you're a therapist. It was kind of just a bunch of Dr. Phils.
Mm-hmm.
Just adding doctor in front of their name, or some of them would just not even claim to be a doctor, but they're giving out mental health advice and doing counseling with teenagers, yet they have no ability in it. Like, everything that they told us was 90% fiction.
Well, and they're scripted too. Not scripted
Especially the seminars.
Yeah. There's a certain way they have to say things. So when you got there, how long did it take for everything to sink in fully?
Oh God, it probably took me at least a week at first to like realize nobody was going to come save me. The first night was the hardest. I went through the whole intake process, and they gave me a mattress and told me to sleep on the floor in the hallway. And like that night, I don't think I really slept. I think I just laid there and cried. I was just convinced at first, like, I'll just write a letter home. I'll call my mom in the morning and tell her this place is terrible and she'll come and get me. Someone will come save me. They won't let me stay here. They're just trying to scare me. After that first week, I kind of started to realize they aren't going to let me call my mom. They're not going to let me call anybody.
Yeah.
They're reading my letters home and censoring them. Anything, my biological mom had shown me letters that she had gotten from me, and there were Sharpie lines all over them. If I said anything negative about the program or how I was doing, it didn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
It was taken out completely. They were monitoring everything that we did. And I started to realize that. And I think after the first month, it really started to sink in, like, you're here for the long haul. If you do what they say, you can get out of here and go home sooner. But you're here until you either turn 18 or you start to listen and comply. And that's really all those programs care about, is just do what they tell you to do. Pretend to be what they want you to be, and you'll make it through if you just keep your mouth shut and your head down. But I couldn't keep my mouth shut or my head down. I butted heads with them every step of the way, which was how I ended up getting taken down to Mexico.
Before when you got there, did they buddy you up with somebody? Did explain the rules? Did they have somebody go over like all that shit with you?
Yeah, and I basically, she was the only person I was allowed to talk to for a while. I think it was like the first 2 weeks, she was the only person I was allowed to talk to, and she was an upper level at the time.
Yeah.
She was 14. I'm like pretty sure she was only 14 when she was my buddy. And they're the ones, like, they're your only source of communication for the first couple weeks that you're there. You're not allowed to talk to anybody else. You can't look at anybody else. It gets really lonely really quick. And they do their best to explain the rules to you and what's expected of you. But at the same time, it's really hard for them because they're someone close to your age. And they know what it's really like and what's really going on. Mm-hmm. And they can't tell you, they can't warn you. They would get in trouble. They'd either get a category or
run plans. Or like, they could throw run plans on you and just be like you were talking to them about, shit they shouldn't know already. That could be your run plans. I could like that.
And it's like, because of how the category system would work, they could just decide anything was run plans. You could be like, oh, it's a sunny day. Oh, that's run plans.
Mm-hmm. Talking about the weather. Yeah.
It was ridiculous. Like, and they explained, like, I remember her explaining specifically, like, the breakfast and lunch routines. We weren't allowed to talk. We had to listen to these, like, random ass self-help tapes. Like, I still to this day, anytime I hear the name Zig Ziglar, I kind of cringe because I think I'm familiar with all of his work at this point. I heard it for like 18 months total.
Yeah.
I know the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I think I heard that one a few times. Yeah, like during dinner, we were kind of allowed to talk. But if you were on level 1, you couldn't talk to any other level 1s. You had to talk to only level 2s or above.
I was going to ask that. So when you first got there, I didn't mean to cut you off, but when you first got there, they don't let you talk to anybody, or can you talk to level 3s? Like, was there a thing, or were you just kind of on blackout when you got there?
Like, the first 2 weeks, you're kind of on blackout. The only person you can talk to is your hope buddy. And then after that, if you're a level 1, you can only talk to level 2s or above. Okay. Because if you talk to a level 1, you guys might be making run plans.
Yes, yeah.
And anytime, like, I would forget and I would try and talk to someone just because they're a person, they wanted to talk. And I had gotten a category 3 once for run plans just because I said, hi, how are you doing, to another girl that was on level 1. Like, level 2, you could talk to anybody, but level 1, you were just kind of blacked out from everything. You just had to make sure that you were aware of what level everybody was on so that you didn't accidentally forget. And the only time you could talk to everybody is during group. Whenever the therapist or the family rep was in the room, we were allowed to talk to anybody. And that was just once a day. And when you first get there and you're new and you don't understand the rules and you don't understand how these consequences work, you just want to talk to somebody. You're lonely. That's one of the things that these places thrive on, is isolating kids.
Lilith, knock it off.
Like, that's, I think one of their big goals is just the isolation and making you feel like you're totally alone and you don't have anyone in your corner.
That's a big part of it for sure. The whole did you develop a sense of when you were there, like always waiting for the other shoe to drop, or like did your like for me, for example, I got super ridiculously bad OCD and perfection from the program because I'm always waiting for the other shoe to drop. I'm always waiting for somebody to like, oh shit, did I do something like a fucking month ago or whatever, and get called on, you know, however long ago, you know, does that pop up for you?
Oh yeah. Like, I mean, I'm 38 now and there's days when I'm walking to work, I'm just convinced that like somebody is going to come and take me again. I'm going to get taken away and just ripped away from my life again. And while I was there, like the way we had to do things every day and like the specific order of things and the nitpickiness of the cleaning, like when I first got out, it took a long time to kind of like reprogram myself to be a normal person and understand that like I don't have to wake up every morning and thoroughly deep clean my bathroom. I don't have to ask someone for permission to walk out of my room. And like I had actually gone back to CrossCreek for a little reunion a couple years ago, and being there, like we kept joking around when we would want to walk out of because it's a hotel now, we would like stand in our doorway and yell out, you know, can I cross out?
Yeah.
Like the first night I was there, my big thing was I'm going to take longer than a 5-minute shower in this bathroom. But at the back of my mind, I kept waiting for someone to just come break that door down. Because there were still little things around the hotel that those of us that had been there that we knew. Like there was a door that said Radio 3. And we remembered when that was where they would sit, and when someone had to be restrained, they'd come out of that little door and go take them down. It's a lot though, like a lot of just kind of looking over my shoulder. If I do something at work, like if I don't quite get all my cleaning done, I'll be really worried about, you know, am I going to get in trouble for this? And I'm a full-ass adult now. And I get weirded out by stupid stuff. Like there's even foods that I can't eat after being in Mexico and dealing with all that. Like there's even certain foods I won't eat.
What are some of those foods?
Pinto beans, rice, and plain oatmeal.
That sucks, man. Rice can be good sometimes. Like if you do some rice good, man, that sucks.
It's all we would get, and we had to eat every single bite of it. And if we didn't, or if you threw up, they didn't care. You still had to eat it.
Walk us through like so you were at you were at CrossCreek for how many months?
I think it was about 16 months. And then I was at High Impact for I think 8 months.
Okay. Excuse me. When did you go through your first seminar? When you got, like, how long after you got there, and what was your experience of the seminar? And what was the order of the seminars? Like, was it orientation, discovery, focus, or was it discovery, focus? Sorry, that was a lot of questions.
I think I went through discovery a couple months after I had gotten there. I remember I went discovery, focus, And those were the only 2 I ever went through because
Okay.
they were weird.
Yeah.
The whole seminar process was very cultish and very weird.
When you say that, like, what makes you say that? Like, what made you say that or feel that way?
Like, I remember some of the processes they made that they had us do, and I could see them using it as just another way to manipulate and brainwash us by the things that they were saying to us. Well, if you're a good kid and you listen to your parents and you do what everybody expects you to do, they'll love you. But if you keep acting like this, nobody's going to love you. Your parents don't love you. That's why you're here. You're
Well, that's not even
unlovable.
true. It's not even true.
And then they were claiming to, oh, well, if you do this, this, and this, and you stand there and you look in a mirror and you sing, I will always love you to yourself, and you let people like hoist you up in the air, then you'll really understand what being loved is. And it was just like, I don't even know. It was just, they were random and weird. And I remember in one of them, they gave us towels with duct tape around them. And like, we were just supposed to be mad and yell and beat up the floor. And I don't understand the purpose of any of that. Like, some of the stuff that they had us do was just humiliating, reading out our deepest secrets in front of people and having them nitpick and tear us apart and just make us feel like we are the lowest of the lowest. Like, that was the hardest part for me, was having to turn on my peers and say mean things to them when I had no reason. I had nothing about them that I didn't like. Like, I couldn't even talk to half of them. But here I am having to judge them for things that they've done that I know nothing about. I don't know the situation that they were in.
Do you deal with a lot of guilt still from that?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And I've talked with other girls that I'd been at CrossCreek with that struggle with that too. Because the things that they would expect us to say to each other were just horrible. Like, as an adult, I wouldn't say that to somebody.
Yeah, I was just gonna say something for the listeners. In my opinion, everybody has their own opinion, but from the research I've done, and in my opinion, the whole point of the seminar is to break the person down and then rebuild them up into a certain narrative, whatever narrative they want you to fill. That's what they're trying to build you back up as, in my opinion. And it's all mind control. It's all brainwashing. I don't care what anybody says, because deep down at the deep roots of everything, if you follow the roots down to the bottom, it's all brainwashing and mind control and all that, in my opinion.
Especially with the WASP programs. Like,
Yeah.
WASP is all about the brainwashing, manipulation, break you down any way you can. That was the whole purpose of High Impact, was to finish breaking kids down.
Except they probably, from what I hear, they did it also more with a lot more physical brutality there.
Yeah, and they could get away with it because it was Mexico.
Were there child protection laws? Like, what did you hear when you transferred there? What did they tell you about, like?
I had seen the girls that had come back from High Impact, and they looked really dead inside. Like, they were just numb to everything at that point. And I couldn't understand Like, in my mind, I was like, it can't possibly be that bad. But then when I got there, it was terrible. Like, you're completely isolated. I had heard rumors about how bad the place was, but I had kind of thought maybe it was just an over exaggeration, like they wouldn't really send us to this type of a place that could really be that bad. But then when I got down there, it was worse than even the rumors I had heard. Like, I have never met anyone quite like Miguel.
And for those who don't know, who's Miguel?
Miguel was the director of High Impact. He was the one that was in charge of everything down there and was the main one that he would always, when he came down, you knew someone was going to be getting hurt. He would show up, people would get restrained. He loved restraining people. I cannot even count how many times I had him restrain me for just stupid stuff. Like, oh, I looked up. One of the big rules of High Impact was you don't look around, you look at the ground. When you sit, you have to have your hands on your knees and you don't look up. You don't talk. You eat your food that you're given. If you throw up, you are expected to continue eating and eat what you had vomited. And this was like all stuff that was handed down from Miguel. Just things that any sort of sadistic treatment he could think of that he knew he could get away with, he would administer. Like, at one point I had to dig a hole for a septic tank and he wouldn't give me a shovel. He told me to just use a teaspoon. And he had me and two other girls out there digging it and watching us, laughing at us when, we're trying our hardest to do this just so he'll leave us alone for 5 minutes. Him laughing at us, telling us, if you don't hurry up, I'll restrain you. Like, his big thing was sticking people in timeout and just leaving them there. And it was just a 6 foot by 6 foot, like, chain link cage, pretty much. And you just sat there.
Like a dog kennel?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I sat there for like 6 months.
You were there 6 months?
I was at High Impact for a total of 8 months, and I was in timeout for like 6 of those because I wouldn't listen. I wouldn't just walk laps like they wanted me to.
Did you feel defeated?
But at that point, I just kind of accepted it. I realized I was going to be 18 soon, and I didn't think my parents would go through the process of having me court ordered to stay past 18. So at that point, I felt completely defeated, and I just figured at this point, I'm going to be 18 soon. I may as well just try and ride it out and sit it out, and made a choice that I was just not going to do anything. And Miguel saw that and stuck me in timeout. He said, fine, you don't want to do anything, you can just sit here. And I said, okay. But I had hoped it would kind of get me off his radar, since he realized, oh, she's not going to do anything. She's just going to sit here and wait until she turns 18 and then she'll be gone.
Did the opposite, right?
Yeah. I was getting restrained daily. At one point, I remember I wasn't even allowed to sit up for like a week. I had to lay on my stomach with my arms out to the sides and my chin in the sand for like a week. He wouldn't let me even just sit. I had my blankets taken away at nighttime and just had to sleep on the concrete. I remember one night they just had me sit outside all night. And I got to go inside the tent at about 4 a.m. because there was, like, the scorpions were starting to come out and crawl across the sand, and they realized that, you know, here's a girl from Indiana. She doesn't really know much about scorpions. We should probably have her come inside so she doesn't die.
They just didn't want a lawsuit.
I'm honestly surprised that they didn't get shut down before a lot sooner than they did. Because there were a lot of girls there that there were sexual assaults by Miguel. There were injuries, and we were just forced to pretty much toughen up. Just, oh, you broke your foot? Who cares? Just keep walking. Oh, you were forced to walk miles and miles the day before. You have with no shoes. You have blisters. Oh, well, it doesn't matter. Oh, those blisters are infected. You didn't go to a doctor. There was no medical care in Mexico whatsoever. And I remember, like, when I turned 18, Miguel and his wife, Allie, drove me back across the border and took me to a bus station in, like, San Diego or something.
Something close.
Yeah, whatever little California town there is that has a Greyhound station on the California-Mexico border.
That sounds about right.
And I remember as we were leaving the high impact, like, compound, looking around and realizing, like, we were in the middle of nowhere. Like, there was a little town, but with where this house was and the way it was set up, we were screwed. If anybody had tried to run, they were screwed. There was nowhere to go. There was nowhere to hide. It was just this teensy little, like, blip of a town. And I remember as we were leaving, I was like, wow, it's actually kind of cool here. It looks like this is a pretty interesting little town. But it would have been nice to, like, be able to see this on different circumstances. And they didn't say anything to me as they were driving me. I was just told to take what I had. They gave me some zip ties to hold my shoes shut because they had taken my shoelaces. And they tried to make me look as clean and put together as possible. But at that point,
like you hadn't just gone through hell type shit, right?
They hadn't let me brush my hair out for like a month. And then the night before, I had 3 of the staff, like, trying to brush through my hair.
Yeah.
And we couldn't get all the way through it because it was just so matted and dreadlocked from not being able to take care of it or shower. And our clothes, we had to hand wash everything with, like, a bar of soap and a washboard. So, like, our clothes were never fully clean. So I can only imagine what people thought when they saw me get on that Greyhound bus.
Yeah.
Like, matted hair, dirty clothes, sneakers with holes in them, and zip ties, like...
Yeah.
I remember I told a couple people on that trip my story, and the looks that you get from people. Like, there's no way.
Yeah, or they just don't realize, like, the gravity, like, what you're actually saying. Like, they just don't get it.
Yeah. It's either they just don't believe you, or they don't get the magnitude of how bad it really is in these places.
Yeah.
Whether it's because you get physically restrained or you're one of the kids that has to sit in isolation. I was sent to isolation on my 17th birthday.
I was going to ask you about that, yeah. Was that a CrossCreek or high impact?
At CrossCreek. I was, during group that day, I didn't feel like sharing, and Ron had a problem with that, and he was like, fine, you don't want to talk? You can go sit in isolation until you're ready to talk.
And Ron, for people that don't know, was he like the family father, or like who was Ron?
Ron was one of the director types at CrossCreek. He was kind of the main disciplinarian.
Okay.
And he was the one, when he came around, you just shut up and hope you're invisible during that session. You don't want him to notice you.
Or if he does notice you, you want it to be a good notice, so get on his good side type shit, right?
Yeah, and because of the fact I was stubborn as fuck, I wasn't on anybody's good side because I wouldn't do anything. I didn't want to talk. I thought the whole process was ridiculous. I didn't want to be there.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think I had a problem.
Mm-hmm.
My problem was I was there. That was the problem.
Yeah. Okay, so going back to CrossCreek a little bit, in your stay there, I'm curious about the transition. Like, how did the transition happen from CrossCreek to, like, what led up to that transition from CrossCreek to high impact, and like what happened during that whole process? How did they get you transported, all of that?
It was actually a pretty quick process. I had been warned by Ron a few times, like, if you don't start working the program, you're going to Mexico. And it was a threat that I had heard from a lot of people. I didn't think my parents would actually go for it. But apparently Ron had called my dad and aunt at some point, and they were like, yeah, do what you need to do. And once he had the okay from my parents, it was about a week. One night I was pulled out of my bed, and they're like, no, you're not going to sleep. You're going to come sit up at the desk. The escorts will be here soon. And they got there. It was the middle of the night, and they drove me through the night. And I remember it was just as the sun was starting to come up in the morning. We were crossing the border into Mexico. They told me, just pretend to be asleep. We'll be there in a minute. And I mean, at that point, I just did what I was told. And we got into Mexico, and it was probably about a 45-minute to an hour drive from the border into where the compound was. And we just all of a sudden pulled up to this fence, and there was just tarps all over the fence blocking out any vision, like any view in. They opened up the gate, and we just drove into this like large rectangular dirt area, and that was where we would just do the laps and stuff, and that was just that. It was a pretty quick process to when I had given up trying to do anything to get out of there, because I realized my best bet was just waiting it out until I turned 18. I didn't think my parents would be like, oh, well, yeah, we'll send her to Mexico even though she's going to be 18 in less than a year. I had no idea that they would go that far with it. I don't think they even knew like how bad Mexico and CrossCreek even were.
Probably not. They were probably deceived.
I mean, I've seen some of the commercials and the brochures, and I can see how parents could be deceived easily by it.
Yeah.
Like, they paint it out to be something it's not. The brochure for High Impact made it look like, oh, we'll go hike through the desert in Mexico, and
Yes, one size fits all, or one size cures everything, you know, and it's just like it doesn't. It doesn't. Let's see. At CrossCreek and well, I know a little bit more about High Impact just because I've had another person on the podcast already that's been there. But at CrossCreek, did they have intervention and study hall / worksheets? Did they have like a worksheet like? So they had both of those there.
oh yeah, we had worksheets. We had a whole group that was called SH Group that they were the other kids like me that for whatever reason weren't complicit and wouldn't work the program, and we would just sit and listen to tapes all day.
Okay.
We didn't go to class. We just sat in tapes and listened to the worksheets. And
did they ever make you write sentences a bunch of times?
no, I think like some girls might have, but I don't remember any ever doing that. Just a lot of like, we had to write notes on the tapes that we would listen to during breakfast and lunch. For worksheets, we would be given like a paper with questions about whatever tape we were listening to and have to answer these questions about them, and just to like prove that we were paying attention.
Okay. And they also had intervention, the solitary confinement thing there? Did you ever no, were you ever sent there, like, or did you hear about anybody that got sent there?
Oh, there were girls sent to solitary like all the time. It was just this small white room with a door, and you got nothing. You just sat there. I was sent in on my 17th birthday for luckily only a day.
Okay.
But there were some girls that spent days, weeks.
I spent 4 days in there at Spring Creek.
Yeah, we had girls that would spend like a lot longer than I did in there. And just even one day it's hard enough. You have nothing, you just sit there. They wouldn't even give you a water bottle, and you had to ask for everything. Like, you already had to ask for everything, but it was even more humiliating when you had to ask for a drink of water, ask to go use the bathroom because you're stuck in this tiny little room, and you basically just kind of feel forgotten about after the first couple hours. You start to think, nobody's even going to come check on me at all and make sure that I'm okay.
Also, I noticed that time goes by extremely slow in there. Like, I'm talking like Twilight Zone type shit. Like, it's crazy. Like, when I was in there 4 days, I came out and I thought I'd been in there like fucking like a day and a half, 2 days. And it'd been fucking like 4 days. It was crazy. Because it fucks with your head because of the sensory deprivation and everything attached to it too. Because it's not just, you're not just by yourself in a room. You're like, they deprive you of like sunlight, like all that shit. Like, you don't get any vitamin D from the sun. Like, you can't see outside. There's bars in the windows just for people that don't know. It's really crazy what they were allowed to get away with in places like these. It's crazy. So let's see. So you went to High Impact, and so did you get pulled then? Or you turned 18, right?
I turned 18 and I took my exit plan. I got a one-way bus ticket to my biological mom's house in San Bernardino and $20 from my dad. And I took that the second They had the bus ticket ready for me on my 18th birthday, and I spent my 18th birthday on a Greyhound going to meet my biological family for the first time. It was just,
Go ahead.
it was, I don't know, it was just kind of surreal, like being on a bus after everything that I had been through the last 18 months with being in programs, like the readjusting to being a normal person. It was weird. Like, I don't think I really talked to anybody during the trip home because I wasn't allowed to talk for so long, so I figured, oh, I can't.
It's like, how the fuck would I even start that conversation anyways? How would you even start that conversation with somebody? You know, like, oh, how are you doing? How's your day going? Oh, my day? Oh, don't even get me started.
I got freed.
Yeah.
This is my first time out in 18 months.
How did it feel? Like, how liberating did it feel to finally be out of that place and like just no longer part of that bullshit?
It felt so good. I remember that when I got to the Greyhound station, there was this little sub shop inside the Greyhound station. And I took that $20 that I had gotten from my dad. And the first thing I had done after I saw Miguel and Allie pull away was I went in and got something to eat. I went in and got a sandwich. And I remember it was like the best sandwich I'd ever had in my whole life because it was the first thing I had eaten that it was something I got to pick that I wanted to eat when I wanted to eat. And
Not how fast you eat it.
Oh, right? God, my bus left in like 20 minutes, so I think that sandwich was gone in like 5. Because just eating real food again was the best feeling ever. And I remember I got a soda because we didn't really, having a soda was a special treat, a very rare special treat for like holidays. So I was able to get a Pepsi, like an actual name brand Pepsi. And that was a big deal. It wasn't just the generic Shasta that they would always give us. It was a real soda and real food.
That's awesome. When you got out, how was it reintegrating into society? I know we talked about it a little bit already earlier, but just like reintegrating into society, like making friends, reaching out and being able to talk to people. Because I know for me, it was really hard for me. I went through hell. I still fucking deal with hell.
Yeah, it was hard. It's still hard. It's one of those things, like, I'm very close with some of the girls that I was at CrossCreek with because I know that they understand me, and like other survivors of the troubled teen industry, they understand, and it's nice to have those people that understand. I don't think I would be half as adjusted as I am without them, because I've noticed a lot of the time with people that haven't been through it, they don't really understand, or they, like we said earlier, they don't, grasp the magnitude of the situation.
Yeah.
And coming out of that, I still have a hard time with talking to people, making eye contact. I went to Pride with my best friend last year, and one of her friends made eye contact with me. And I kind of just shut down. I am so used to, when I was there, it was just, look down, don't talk. If you do talk, you just keep looking down. You can't look at people. And it's still kind of hard. I'm lucky I have a really great support system, and they do their best to try and understand why I am the way I am, and kind of step in when they can tell that I'm uncomfortable with a situation. So I'm really lucky in that aspect, and I always have my CrossCreek sisters that they understand better than any other people understand me. But yeah, it's still like 20 years later, still hard to do like simple things like even answering my phone half the time is a battle.
You get anxiety when the phone rings sometimes? Same here. Yeah.
Just even talking, going out and doing things. Like most of what I do, I just stay at home and I go to work. I don't go out and do things just because it's too people-y. I don't people very well.
You have social anxiety?
I
Same
feel
here.
like a big part of that is because when we're in these programs, we're shut off for so long. Even from the girls and kids like our own age and our peers, we're not allowed to freely talk to them. We're not allowed to make eye contact.
But there's tons of them there, but we're still not allowed. I think
Yeah,
that sucks that too.
like then going from that environment to an environment where, you're supposed to look at people, you're supposed to be able to at least make basic conversation with people.
Even eye contact, you're supposed to be able to look people in the eyes. Like for
We
job
were
interviews and stuff, like they expect you to look them in the eyes when they're in job interviews, at least from my experience,
and we
I've
were
never gotten a
denied of
job where I
like
looked down. Never.
we
Always.
weren't taught how to socialize during our formative years of being teenagers when we were supposed to be learning how to properly socialize and etiquette. We were taught, nope, just keep your mouth shut, look down.
Yeah. How's your relationship? You don't have to answer this if you don't want to. But how's your relationship with your parents
Um,
nowadays?
my relationship with my dad is non-existent. I have not talked to him in years. I think it was around the time my daughter was born. He had sent me a gift card for Christmas one year for her, and I called him and said thank you, and that was that. And my mom, my relationship with her had gotten pretty good. She passed away a few years ago,
Rest in peace.
and at the time, the right before she passed, we were in a pretty good space, and I had seen her. She came to visit when I was about 7 months pregnant, and my aunt had come with her, and my aunt asked me at that time if I was ready to talk about what happened and if I wanted to talk at all about CrossCreek. And I mean, this was 15 years ago, and at that point, I wasn't ready to I hadn't even come out of the fog yet.
You hadn't even really compartmentalized what actually happened yet, fully?
I was still under the very strong impression that it had helped, that if they didn't send me away, I would have ended up dead or something. Like, I still thought that everything that had happened was normal. It was okay. It was done to help me, and that, all the people, Miguel and Ron, they had my best interest at heart. They only wanted to help me. And it's like after being around Ron for so long and being around certain staff members at these places, you kind of start to believe that, oh no, they do care about me. I want to try and, do what they are telling me to do so that they'll be proud of me. And
yeah, there's a certain syndrome. There's a name for that. It's where they start identifying with like the
Stockholm
shit like
syndrome.
that. Yeah, it's exactly like that. Yeah, and brainwashing. Yeah,
It's really easy with these types of situations because you know you're told this is helping. This is helping. Like, we just have to break you down and then we'll fix you. This is all going to fix you. And when the realization finally hits that that wasn't helping, that didn't help at all, it made everything worse. And it was a long process of starting to realize, like, that wasn't okay how they treated us. We didn't deserve to be treated like that, especially the way High Impact was. Like, kids should never be treated like that. And starting to realize, like, Ron knew what was going on in Mexico. He knew how people were being treated down there, but he was still consciously sending these kids. And like connecting the dots of, you know, they aren't trying to help, they were really just hurting me further. And just that was hard for me to start accepting that my parents made this choice. It was mostly my adoptive father and my aunts that made the choice and found CrossCreek and chose to send me there. And still to this day, I don't know if they even are aware of what it was really like there because I haven't talked to them about it. I've just kind of, at this point, figure there's nothing left to say to them, that if they had wanted to talk to me about it, they could have by now, but nobody has, so why even bother? I'm living a pretty fantastic life without any help from them, so it's not even worth it.
Okay. I have a two-part question here. Do you think you could ever forgive your parents for sending you there? I also want to point out, like, in my own experience, like, I've forgiven my parents, but I'm never gonna fucking forget that shit. I'm not gonna forget it. I've forgiven them for sending me there. So my question to you is, do you think you could ever forgive and forget, or forgive them? And also, well, let's start there. Let's start with that.
I've forgiven them, but you know, like you said, I won't forget. I'll never forget it, but I've forgiven them. I've come to terms with it. I'm a parent myself now, and I can see how it looked to a parent at their wits' end with a child struggling with mental health issues. I can see how it looked like something that may be beneficial, but especially with W.A.S.P, it's a lot of just smoke and mirrors. They put up this false front that they're so great and that their
Gaslighting.
facilities are so great, but it's all fraud. It's all phony. And I understand as a parent why they could have fallen into that and believed it. It sounds like a great thing at first, you know, they're gonna fix your kid.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna get back this new healed child that's healthy and happy, and like, it's nothing like that. Like, I've forgiven my dad for it, but I actually had recently found out that 2 of my aunts played key parts in me getting sent to CrossCreek, and I'm still working on forgiving my aunts. It's a process. I don't think that I will ever speak to them or want to have a relationship with them in my life, but I will definitely continue working forward on forgiving them. But for my dad, I've forgiven him, and I can see where he's coming from at that time. Like, I get it.
For sure. And I also just wanted to make a side note. Fuck, what was I gonna say? Damn it. I spaced it. It'll come back to me. The second part of the question that I was gonna ask you though was if you could say anything to your parents, your aunt right now about the program that you just maybe always wanted to tell them, like, what would you say to them? Like, if they were to see this video and like what would you want to say to them, if anything?
Like, just if they ever put in that position again, to please just do thorough research. Don't offer recommendations for help, especially when children are involved, without thoroughly looking into what you're suggesting. Like, dig as deep as you can before making an actual choice. And it kind of blows my mind. One of my aunts is like a psychiatrist or psychologist at one point, like, and she was the one that actually, I found out recently that she was the one that had found CrossCreek. And I wish she hadn't. Like, I really wish she hadn't, or I wish somebody in my family would have stepped up and fought for me and gotten me the hell away from all of them. Because that was absolutely the worst possible place that I could have been, ever.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. I remember what I was gonna say. My experience with emotions, negative and positive emotions, I don't believe that there are such things as negative and positive emotions. I feel that, like we were talking about earlier, like forgiving and not forgiving. Okay? Never forget, for like the audience and even for you, like, I found that just feel what you're feeling. Don't like hold shit, like don't try and like fight against shit. Like, if you don't feel like you can forgive somebody, don't forgive them then. And just ride with that emotion, ride with that feeling. Don't push against it, because the second you start pushing against these emotions and feelings, in my experience, it can consume you. Like, it really can. And but if you just allow yourself to feel it and just go with the motions of it, because there's no right or wrong way to feel. Everybody interprets shit differently, like everybody experiences shit differently, so it's okay to not forgive. And I just want to remind people that it's okay to forgive and it's okay to not forgive.
And it took me a long time to learn that one, that it's okay for me to work towards forgiving, but I mean, something like this that drastically affects the rest of your entire life, it's not something that you just forget. Like, there's no way I could ever just forget it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It becomes it becomes a part of your identity for a while, at least for a while. Let's see. And before I ask the last question that I always ask everybody that comes on the show, is there anything else you want to add to your story? Anything? Or actually, no. Hold on. Before that, most positive experience, if there's any. Most negative experience, if there's any. Like the craziest shit that you saw, anything like that. And you can list more than one if you want. List as many as you.
The biggest positive is just the women that I have in my life now, from being there, the women that I've watched them grow up and start their own families now, that we've been there supporting each other through all the life events and everything. One of my closest girls that I consider one of my sisters was, I'm pretty sure she might have been the only successful runner from CrossCreek. Like, she ran and she was gone for a minute. And of course, when they found her, they hauled her back, but that's one of the things that I always remember, especially about her, is just she was the one that got out and she was gone for a while.
Did you
And
get sent back?
the big thing was, what'd you do when you were out? Like,
yeah.
She's like, I ate food. But like, she also talked about, the nerves of kind of hiding out. It's like you're a criminal on the run when you're a kid that runs from a program. People are looking for you. Mm-hmm. It's a small town. There's only so many places you could really hide in Laverkin. Mm-hmm. It wasn't exactly, Salt Lake. But definitely the most positive is the women that I don't know where I would be without those girls. Like, we've been through so much together, and being able to go back to Laverkin a couple years ago and see some of them and give them hugs for longer than 3 seconds and calling each other out for sexual misconducts because we hugged for longer than 3 seconds it was a fun experience, and I definitely want to try and get some of them together and go back. The negatives were, oh God, there were a lot of negatives. I think the biggest negative is the fear. Constantly looking over my shoulder, even as an adult, when I flew from Oregon to Las Vegas for the reunion at CrossCreek. I remember walking through the Vegas airport, just looking over my shoulder constantly, that that someone was going to come out and just grab me and haul me off to a program again. And I remember I stopped at the bathroom in the airport, and inside every stall was this little sign that said, if you're being trafficked, ask for help. I'm like, okay, but what if you're being escorted to a program? Then what do we do? And like, I remember walking through the airport, just like looking at people just sketched out by everybody, because I was convinced someone was just gonna, come haul me off to a mental hospital or something, or like some program for adults. And even just walking to work or going to the grocery store is something that I still kind of struggle with some days, where I'm just convinced that someone's gonna be like, okay, we're taking you away now. You're not okay. Come with us. I think that's the biggest negative that I've had since with all of that is just the constant just distrust of people.
Okay. When you went there and visited, did you feel like it helped reduce or maybe even increase its hold on you? Do you think it did anything good? Like, what's your experience with that?
I feel like it really gave me a lot of closure. While we were there, the room that they had used for all the seminars was in the process of being demolished. And they had already brought in a wrecking crew, and the walls had mostly been torn down, and it was just rubble. And so I feel like going back, I was able to leave some of that hurt and that fear and all the negative that I was carrying with me. I was just kind of able to leave some of it there when I left. And I feel like it really made a difference that I was there with some of the girls that I had actually been in the program with. And we were able to like all just sit and talk and just process all the emotions of being there, because it was hard walking through those halls, like remembering the different things. And so there were a lot of emotions that came up, but I really feel like it was a positive for me going back and leaving a lot of it there.
Okay.
I came home feeling a lot better mentally than when I left.
Interesting. Okay. And now, knowing what you know now, is it your belief that these places should be regulated and or could be regulated regulated at this point, or do you feel that they should all be shut down?
I feel at this point it's beyond regulating. I feel at this point they just need to be shut down. There is just too much that can be overlooked even with regulation, and I truly believe that they should just be shut down.
Okay. I agree. Okay, and is there anything more you want to add to your story? Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming on here and sharing your story. It's been extremely interesting. I'm really glad that you came on and shared. Like I tell everybody, if there's anything you want to do, like you forgot to talk about when we end this or whatnot, just let me know and we'll make a part 2. And also, I'd meant to make some announcements before I even started this podcast. So I'm going to say them now. I doubt a lot of people will watch this whole video, but I'm going to say the announcements are that if anybody wants to be interviewed, or email me at straightoutofbspodcast@gmail.com. I'm on almost all streaming platforms now, except for iTunes because they charge money, and Vimeo because they only let me upload 1 video a week unless I pay. So there's that. Also, yeah, I think that's it. And also, I was going to run by one more thing. I was going to run by the idea to the listeners. I was thinking about possibly making merch with maybe this design, or like a couple, like, or maybe even like collabing with, I think it was Jen Robinson or whatever, who was doing the artwork thing. If we could like produce t-shirts or something for like people that are fans of the podcast or whatever, to get the word out there. So let me know what you guys think, if you think that's a cool idea or whatnot. And one more thing that I remembered. I think it's when we get to 50 subscribers, which I'm at 35 right now. at 50 subscribers, I believe YouTube lets you start live streaming. So when that starts to happen, I think it would be a cool idea. I also want to run by the viewers, to live stream like maybe an interview. So then we could have like some open interaction with the audience, whoever's watching. They can ask like certain specific questions for people, because I just feel like that would be a good way to spread a lot more knowledge and whatever, and for people that maybe from just general public to come in, hopefully, and just ask questions, get educated. And because there's only so many questions, there's only so much stuff that I can think of myself. So I think that'll be a good, cool feature. So anyways, thank you guys so much for your support, and we will see you in the next one. Thanks, Amy. Bye.